It was a hug from Harry that brought a woman to tears. India Brown had been waiting patiently since 4 a.m.
Just to see them will be amazing, but if I'm lucky enough to hug Prince Harry, it would just be phenomenal.
The shift has been wild to watch. Prince Harry clearly didn't see this coming, but Australia made its feelings known in a way that couldn't be ignored. What was supposed to be a smooth, positive return to one of their strongest supporter bases quickly turned into something far more uncomfortable. Instead of excitement and cheers, the mood felt colder, and the reaction toward Meghan Markle stood out in a major way. Rather than the warm welcome they once had, Harry is now leaving with a very different experience on his mind. Reports suggest the situation felt heavier because much of the distance from the public seemed aimed at his wife. That contrast alone speaks volumes and shows just how much things have changed. Now rewind to 2018, and everything looked completely different. Fresh off their royal wedding, Harry and Meghan arrived in Australia, surrounded by huge energy. Sydney was packed, crowds filled the streets, and people waited hours just to get a quick glimpse of them. The atmosphere was electric, and it truly felt like one of their highest moments. And it didn't stop there. During that same tour, they shared news about their growing family, and Australians felt personally connected to that moment.
A pregnant Meghan and her husband Prince Harry kicked off their royal duties down under on Tuesday by cuddling a koala at an Australian zoo. The couple officially opened a new science institute in Sydney, mixing with locals during the first day of their packed trip. It's their first engagement since Kensington Palace announced they were expecting a baby in the spring.
Back then, the bond felt real, close, and full of excitement, making today's shift feel even more surprising. The hype back then was undeniable. The energy was massive, almost like a blend of celebrity fame and royal status combined. Everywhere they went, people were cheering, smiling, and fully engaged. It really looked like Australia had fully embraced them without hesitation. But everything began to change once they stepped away from royal duties. After that move, a series of public moments started stacking up. Big interviews, major media deals, streaming projects, and constant headlines slowly reshaped how many people viewed them. Over time, the image that once felt clear started to shift, and people noticed. While they were building a new life in California and stepping into a high-profile lifestyle, their connection with places like Australia started to feel more distant. So when they returned this year, the vibe was completely different. They weren't arriving as official representatives anymore. This time, they came as public figures attending a paid engagement without the royal structure behind them. No official backing, no large-scale programs tied to the visit.
Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be returning as working members of the royal family. Prince Harry and Meghan stepped down from royal duties last year and moved to the United States. The couple, who are expecting their second child, have been stripped of their patronages and honorary titles, which will be returned to the Queen and distributed elsewhere in the royal family.
Just a very different setup compared to before. For many Australians, that raised questions right away. Even before they landed, reactions had already started building. A petition began circulating online and quickly gathered over 40,000 signatures, with people calling for zero taxpayer money to be used for the visit. The message was clear. Many didn't want public funds linked to something they viewed as private business. That reaction reportedly caught Meghan's team off guard, leading to quick statements confirming the trip was fully private with no government involvement. But even with that clarification, the questions didn't slow down. People kept asking the same thing: what's really behind this visit? And when they finally arrived, the contrast was immediate. The massive crowds from 2018 were nowhere in sight. No packed streets, no overwhelming buzz. Instead, appearances felt smaller, more controlled, and far less intense. Meghan stayed composed, but observers noticed right away. The energy had shifted, and it was impossible to ignore how different everything felt this time.
Well, the Sussexes soap opera rolled into town this week, 8 years after Harry and Meghan last came down under in a trip they called the catalyst for leaving the royal family.
The atmosphere felt completely changed. Instead of loud excitement, everything seemed quieter, more reserved, and far less energized. The difference wasn't subtle either. It was obvious the moment they stepped out. Australian media didn't hold back. Some commentators even described the visit as a cosplay royal tour, suggesting it looked royal on the surface, but didn't carry the same official weight or public excitement underneath. That phrase spread quickly and shaped how many people viewed the trip. On the ground, reactions felt mixed. With far less of the genuine hype people remembered from before. A lot of locals seemed unsure about the purpose of the visit. Some openly questioned why Meghan Markle was there at all. The large crowds many expected just didn't show up. And for some, that signaled that their influence in Australia might not be as strong as it once was. Then things became even more noticeable during Meghan's main event. The Best Life retreat was expected to be a major highlight of the trip.
An American and British celebrity couple that's heading our way, and some wags have started up this petition. They're saying, we don't want you here, but the petition demands that no taxpayer funding or official support is provided for Harry and Meghan's private visit to Australia.
Planned for around 300 attendees, but reports suggested tickets didn't fully sell out and attendance looked lower than expected. The venue appeared only partially filled, which quickly sparked even more conversation about public interest and engagement. On top of that, some attendees reportedly felt the event focused a bit too much on Meghan Markle herself instead of delivering strong value to the audience. That instantly added more heat to the conversation and gave people even more to talk about. There were also rumors floating around that the visit might have doubled as a test run for her personal brand in Australia. Some believed she was quietly exploring future business opportunities, trying to see if the public would support her projects later on. That idea alone got people thinking and questioning the bigger picture.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have criticised an online petition ahead of their trip to Australia next month. More than 35,000 people have signed the form saying security and logistics for the pair's tour should not be taxpayer funded.
That's where the confusion really started building. The trip was originally presented as a wellness-focused speaking engagement, but the schedule also included visits to hospitals and shelters. For some observers, those moments didn't fully match the original purpose, and instead came across as carefully planned appearances rather than something natural. That mismatch raised eyebrows quickly. As the skepticism kept growing, the overall perception shifted even more. What could have been seen as a strong return started to feel more like a promotional run that just wasn't landing the way it was expected to. And for many watching, that emotional connection from the past simply didn't feel present anymore. The turning point didn't happen all at once. It built slowly, moment by moment, appearance by appearance, until the full picture became impossible to ignore. What stood out most wasn't just the smaller crowds or quieter reactions.
In Kilda Road, we're just opposite the shrine, and this is the crowd that has gathered just in the past sort of half an hour or so. They arrived about 3:35. A lot of them were here.
It was how differently people were engaging. The energy felt controlled, almost staged at times, and that difference became harder to overlook as the visit went on. Even body language started getting attention. Observers pointed out that interactions looked more formal, less spontaneous, and far less emotional than before. Where there used to be laughter, excitement, and natural chemistry with the public, now everything seemed more measured. Meghan stayed composed, smiling, and greeting people as expected. But the connection didn't feel as deep. Prince Harry, on the other hand, appeared more reserved than usual, and some noticed he looked slightly uncomfortable in certain moments. That contrast didn't go unnoticed at all. Back in 2018, their presence created genuine excitement that felt natural. People weren't just showing up, they were emotionally invested in every moment. Now the reactions felt more like curiosity than real admiration. Instead of overwhelming support, there was a sense people were watching closely.
Know why they're coming.
I think it's probably really nice for them to not have to do all the royal stuff, but yeah, I guess that also means that they're not as sort of relevant, I guess, here.
Almost analyzing every move rather than celebrating it. And that shift carried straight into the media coverage as well. Headlines started focusing less on the events themselves and more on how the public was reacting. The conversation moved away from what they were doing and leaned heavily into how it was being received. That's a huge difference. Once the spotlight shifts like that, the entire narrative changes. Another key moment came when clips from different appearances started spreading online. Videos showed smaller groups, limited engagement, and interactions that felt more controlled than spontaneous. Social media users quickly compared those moments to their earlier visit, pointing out the clear difference in crowd size, energy, and atmosphere.
Can I be honest and tell you I really don't think about them at all?
Are you aware that Harry and Meghan are in Australia?
I had no idea they were coming to Australia.
Yes, I did read about it.
I wasn't aware that they were coming out to Australia at all. I haven't seen anything on the news.
Honestly, no. I did not really know they came last time as well.
I don't know why they're coming.
Once those comparisons started circulating, the contrast became impossible to ignore. Some people even started questioning whether expectations were set way too high going into the trip. After such a massive reception years ago, anything less was always going to feel underwhelming. But at the same time, others argued it wasn't just about expectations, it was about perception. The way the couple is viewed today is very different from before, and that naturally changes how people respond. There was also growing attention on how the events themselves were structured. Unlike traditional royal visits that usually involve large public crowds, this trip leaned more toward controlled environments, private gatherings, and carefully managed appearances. That created a different kind of visibility, one that felt less open and more selective. For some observers, that raised real questions about accessibility and whether the visit was truly meant for the wider public at all. And then came the online discussions, and that's where things really leveled up.
Meghan Markle's $3,000 a head women's retreat in Sydney has failed to sell out.
Across social platforms, people started posting clips, reactions, and detailed breakdowns of every appearance. Some defended Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, saying times have changed and public expectations aren't what they used to be. Others were far more critical, claiming the visit didn't feel authentic and didn't connect the way it probably aimed to. That split reaction only pushed the spotlight even bigger. Right in the middle of all that noise, one question kept popping up again and again. What actually changed? Is it the public? Is it the couple? Or is it the way their roles have shifted and how they present themselves now? Because one thing is clear, the dynamic is not the same anymore. When they were part of the royal structure, their appearances came with built-in meaning, attention, and a level of respect that followed automatically. Now that they're operating independently, that framework is gone, and everything depends much more on personal connection and public interest. That's a completely different game, and this trip made that difference very obvious. Another layer here is timing, and that matters a lot. Public opinion doesn't stay still.
I think it's going to come down to the commercial aspect. You said about brand Sussex. There is talk that she's going to be bringing, as ever, her brand to Australia. I think that we will know, really, whether she's won over those Aussies that maybe didn't have a strong opinion either way before when that gets launched, because it will be in the form of cold, hard cash.
It moves based on headlines, personal decisions, and ongoing media coverage. Over the past few years, there have been many moments that shaped how people view Meghan and Harry today. Whether those moments were positive or not, they all build into one thing: perception. And that perception directly affects how every appearance is received. And in Australia, that perception clearly looks different now. The emotional connection that once felt strong now seems more distant. The excitement that used to come naturally feels more controlled, and the support that once looked guaranteed now feels uncertain. That shift is hard to miss. Even the pacing of the visit became part of the conversation. Instead of one big standout moment that defined everything, the trip felt like a series of smaller appearances that never fully built into something major. Each event passed without creating that huge impact people might have expected. And over time, that pattern became part of the overall story. By the time things started wrapping up, the tone was already locked in. This wasn't being described as a major comeback or a big success. Instead, the focus stayed on the contrast, the questions, and how different everything felt compared to before. That's what people kept talking about, and that's what continued trending even after they left. And for Harry especially,
rockstar royals who captivated the nation back in 2018. But as Prince Harry and Meghan prepare to return here to Australia, the reception is looking, well, a little bit more lukewarm.
The price of new tickets for Harry's big Melbourne appearance have been slashed by 50% only a week before they head down under.
That contrast may have hit differently. Australia was once a place where he had a strong connection with the public. Seeing that dynamic shift in such a visible way likely wasn't easy to take in. Even though he stayed composed throughout the visit, the change in reception probably didn't go unnoticed on a personal level. At the same time, this moment can also be seen as a reality check. Public attention is never guaranteed, and keeping that connection takes consistency, effort, and alignment with what people expect. When any of those pieces change, the reaction can shift just as fast. And that's exactly what this situation seems to highlight. So where does this leave things moving forward? That's the big question right now, because even if this visit didn't go the way it was expected to, it still offers a clear look at how they're currently being seen in places that once fully supported them. And understanding that perception is going to play a huge role in whatever comes next. People are still breaking it down, still debating it, and still trying to figure out what it all really means. And when a visit keeps that kind of attention going, it stops being just another trip. It turns into a defining moment for how the public sees you moving forward. Prince Harry faced a very different kind of pressure during this visit.
Is that Harry and Meghan are also experiencing a popularity drop.
And it became obvious the moment his own event started getting attention. One of the key highlights was his mental health speaking engagement, where he was positioned as the main speaker and expected to draw a strong crowd based on his global name and past influence. But reports suggested the demand didn't match expectations. And that's where things started shifting in a noticeable way. Ticket prices, originally set around $1,300, were reportedly reduced to about $650 in an effort to bring in more attendees. That kind of move doesn't happen randomly, and it immediately sparked talk about whether public interest was as strong as it used to be. Even with the price change, the event still reportedly struggled to fill every seat, adding even more attention to the situation. For Harry, this wasn't just about one event. It pointed to something much bigger. There was a time when his name alone could pull in massive crowds without any extra push. Back when he was fully inside the royal structure, his presence came with a level of excitement that felt automatic. People didn't need convincing. They wanted to be there. But now, that same pull didn't seem to hit the same way, and that contrast quickly became one of the most talked about parts of the entire visit. The situation placed him in a complicated spot. On one side, there's his focus on building a new independent path alongside Meghan Markle, with projects, speaking events, and media work. On the other side, there's the reality of how the public is reacting to that shift. When those two things don't fully line up, it creates tension that's hard to ignore. Observers picked up on that right away. Many pointed out that Harry seems to be operating in a space that doesn't fully belong to either side. He's no longer a working royal with all the structure and built-in support that comes with that role. At the same time, he's not being embraced in the same way as public figures who built their image purely through entertainment or business. That middle space can be tricky, and this trip made that very clear. Even his presence during appearances felt different. There were moments where he looked more reserved, less relaxed than people remembered from before. Nothing extreme, but enough for observers to notice a shift in energy. When expectations are high but the response feels quieter, that contrast can show in subtle ways, and people watching closely definitely picked up on it. And being in Australia made that contrast even stronger. This is a place where Harry once experienced some of his strongest public support. The connection used to feel real, enthusiastic, and consistent. Crowds were large, reactions were warm, and the overall atmosphere was extremely positive. So coming back to that same setting and seeing a different kind of response made the shift stand out even more. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about energy. Even when people showed up, the level of excitement didn't match what had been seen before. Instead of loud reactions and emotional engagement, things felt more measured, more observational. People were watching, but not celebrating in the same way. That difference might seem small at first, but across a full trip, it becomes very noticeable. Another key factor was expectation. Going into the visit, there was likely an assumption that some of that past connection would still be there. After all, those earlier moments don't just disappear. But public perception changes over time, and what people expect from public figures can shift based on everything that happens in between. Over the past few years, Harry and Meghan have been part of many high-profile interviews, projects, and media moments, all of which shape how they're viewed today. And perception plays a huge role in how people respond. When the connection feels strong, the energy follows naturally. When that connection weakens, the reaction becomes more neutral. That doesn't mean people aren't interested. It just means the vibe is different. And throughout this trip, that difference kept showing up again and again. For Harry, this creates a real challenge moving forward. He has to balance the legacy of who he was within the royal family with who he is now as an independent public figure. Those are two very different identities, and moving between them isn't always simple. The expectations tied to each are completely different, and finding that balance takes time. At the same time, this moment can also be seen as a turning point. Situations like this often force a closer look at what's working, what's not, and what might need to shift. When the response doesn't match the expectation, it opens the door for change. That doesn't mean something has gone wrong, it just shows that things are evolving, and the next steps will matter even more. There's also the big question of audience, and this part really changes everything. Who exactly is Prince Harry speaking to right now? Back when he was part of the monarchy, his audience was massive and already built into the role. It didn't matter where he went. There was always a strong base of attention, interest, and support waiting for him. Now, as a speaker and independent public figure, that audience becomes more selective, more segmented, and way less guaranteed. Not everyone who once followed him is automatically stepping into this next chapter with him, and that shift alone creates a completely different situation. And that's where things start getting more complicated, because building an audience from scratch, or even reshaping an existing one, is not simple at all. It requires consistency, a clear message, and a strong connection that people actually feel. Without that, interest can fade quickly, especially in a space where attention is constantly moving from one topic to the next. And in this case, that challenge became very visible during the trip. And that brings everything right back to the event itself. A mental health speaking engagement is serious, meaningful, and important, but it also depends heavily on how people connect with it. It's not just about the topic. It's about how the message is delivered, how relatable it feels, and whether the audience sees value in showing up. People need to feel engaged, interested, and emotionally connected to what's being said. If that connection isn't as strong as expected, it can directly affect turnout no matter how important the subject is. That doesn't take away from the value of the work at all. It just highlights how important audience response really is. Another layer that makes this situation even more intense is how fast public perception can shift. We're in a time where reactions happen instantly. The moment something happens, people are already posting, reacting, and sharing their opinions. There's no delay anymore. Discussions spread quickly, clips go viral within minutes, and comparisons show up almost immediately. So when people started noticing differences between this trip and previous visits, those observations didn't stay small, they spread fast and kept building. And once that kind of conversation starts, it's hard to slow it down. Clips, photos, and reports all started shaping the overall narrative in real time. People compared crowd sizes, analyzed interactions, and broke down every detail they could find. Some defended Harry, saying things have changed and expectations should naturally adjust over time. Others took a more critical view, suggesting that the lower turnout and quieter reactions reflected a bigger shift in public interest. That split in opinion didn't calm things down. It made everything even louder. And attention, whether positive or critical, keeps the spotlight active. Even after the event ended, the discussion didn't stop. People kept talking about what it meant, what it said about his current position, and how it might affect future appearances. That ongoing conversation is powerful because it keeps the situation relevant long after the actual moment has passed. And in today's world, staying relevant, whether for good or for debate, plays a huge role in public perception. For Harry, this level of attention isn't new, but the way it feels now is completely different. Before, much of the attention came with built-in support. There was a structure behind it, a system that helped shape how he was seen and how his appearances were received. Now, without that structure, the attention feels more direct, more personal, and much more focused on results. People are not just watching. They're evaluating, comparing, and forming opinions based on what they see in real time. That shift changes everything about how the spotlight works. And that brings in the bigger picture, which can't be ignored. This wasn't just about one event or one trip. It's part of a much larger story about transition, identity, and public connection. Moving from one role to another on a global stage is never easy. Every appearance becomes part of that journey, and every reaction adds another layer to how that journey is understood. There's no reset button. Everything builds on what came before. The Australia visit simply made that transition more visible than ever. It showed the difference between past and present in a way that was easy for people to see and react to. The contrast wasn't hidden. It was right there in the crowd sizes, the energy, the reactions, and the overall tone of the visit. And once people start noticing those differences, they don't just move on. They start asking questions, making comparisons, and forming new expectations. And expectations are powerful, because once expectations shift, everything that follows gets measured against them. Future appearances won't just be judged on their own. They'll be compared to this moment, to past visits, and to whatever people now believe is the new normal. That creates pressure, but it also creates direction. It shows what people are responding to and what might need to change moving forward. So now the focus naturally moves ahead. What changes, if any, will be made? How will future events be structured? Will there be a shift in approach, tone, or audience engagement? And most importantly, how will Harry continue building that connection with people in this new phase of his life? Those are the questions that stay in the air, and they matter more now than ever. Because even if this trip didn't go exactly as expected, it still provided something valuable. Clarity. It showed where things stand right now. It highlighted what's working, what might not be landing as strongly, and where adjustments could be needed. That kind of insight is important, especially in a space where perception and connection play such a big role. It's not about labeling the moment, it's about understanding it. At the same time, it's important to remember that public response is always evolving. What feels one way today can shift again tomorrow. Attention moves, opinions change, and new moments can reshape everything quickly. That's just how the landscape works now. So while this visit adds an important chapter, it doesn't lock in the entire story. It simply moves it forward. And for Harry, that means the story is still being written in real time. Every appearance, every event, every decision adds another layer to how he's seen and how people connect with him. That's both the challenge and the opportunity, because while expectations can shift, so can perception. And how that's handled next will play a big role in what comes after this. So now it's your turn to jump into the conversation. What do you think about how everything played out during this visit? Do you see this as a temporary shift that could change again, or something that reflects a longer-term direction? And where do you think things go from here for Harry as he continues building this next chapter? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you made it this far, and don't forget to subscribe and share for more updates. See you on the next one.